All right, so today we're really,
Diving deep into Bertrand Russell's The Analysis of Mind.
oh yeah,
And
big one.
it's a big one. We're not going to tackle the whole thing, obviously, but
Yeah.
we're going to really focus on how he takes these big swings at, like, what even is mind, right? Like, beyond just saying, well, it's not matter, you know?
Right, exactly. And
It gets really interesting because this is 1921.
yeah,
So you've got
huge moment.
Einstein, like, rocking everybody's world with relativity.
Yeah, you've got like physics is changing, psychology is changing.
Yeah.
And Russell's trying to bridge these two like understandings of the world.
Absolutely. And you can even see those influences, right? Like, even in psychology at the time, it's becoming much more about behaviorism, you know?
Right.
Like observable things, not just like, oh, tell me your thoughts and feelings.
Exactly.
So how does he even begin to unpack this, like this really complicated thing?
She jumps right in. I mean, he really does.
Yeah. He starts with consciousness.
Yeah.
But
Which is a big word, right?
it is a huge word. And
It's kind of a scary word in a way, right?
Yeah.
For people to even approach. Yeah.
And he doesn't define it in the way that you might think. Like, he's not talking about this magical thing that's separate from us. It's all very much like
Right.
embodied.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a good place to kind of start is this idea of neutral stuff.
Okay.
And he gets this from William James.
Okay.
But basically he's saying, look, there's not this like mind and matter, like two separate things. It's more like there's this stuff.
Yeah.
And depending on how it's arranged and how we experience it, it becomes what we think of as mind or matter.
It's like the universe isn't made of two different sets of Legos.
Exactly.
It's like it's all the same stuff, and it's just how it's all put together that determines what it is.
Yeah, and sensations are a really good example of this. So
Okay.
if we think about, like, you know, the warmth from a fire,
Okay.
that's both a physical sensation, right?
Right.
Heat waves hitting your skin.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also,
It evokes something, yeah.
it evokes a feeling, a memory, right? Like, all of that goes into it. So it's not one or the other.
Right.
It's this
blend.
This blend,
It's kind of like, intermingling of both.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm with you so far, but like, what about those things that feel like they're really in our heads, right?
Yeah.
Like thoughts themselves, or like memories, or even like dreams, you know?
Yeah. So he actually argues that these mental images, these things that we have in our minds,
Right.
are very directly tied to our sensory experiences.
Okay.
So they're based in the physical world.
Okay.
Like, if you imagine biting into a lemon,
Okay.
right? You get that, like,
You do, yeah.
that like pucker, that sourness.
Yeah.
That image is built out of a physical experience.
Okay, so we're like constantly
Creating these little representations in here.
based on our interaction.
Our experiences. Okay.
Yes.
Then how do you account for something like instinct?
Yeah.
Right? Like a baby, it's born, it knows to suckle. Right?
Right. And that's where he makes this really important distinction between instinct and habit.
Okay.
So he's not denying that we have these instincts.
Right.
But what he's saying is that even those instincts are kind of like the starting point for learning.
Okay.
So it's like, think about a baby learning to walk.
Okay.
That urge to explore, that's instinctual, right?
Okay.
But then all those stumbles, all those falls.
Right. That's how you actually learn. Yeah.
That's how you learn to walk.
So it's like this weird
It's like interplay.
interplay between the two.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not just nature or nurture. It's this.
Right. It's both. Yeah.
This like combination.
That's a lot to get your head around.
It is. But it doesn't stop there.
Okay.
Because he then goes into desire.
Okay.
Which is a whole other.
All right. Well, let's talk about desire then.
Right.
Because that feels like a very straightforward thing, right? Like, I see the thing, I want the thing.
Right. But he flips the script.
Okay.
He says, no. At its core, desire is not about being pulled towards something pleasurable. It's about being pushed away from discomfort.
Okay. So wait, are you saying that, like, my desire, like, I'm looking at a piece of cake right now, and my desire for that cake is really just my desire to not feel the feeling of not being full?
Essentially, yes.
Really?
Yes. And he gives this example of hunger.
Okay.
Right. Like when we feel hungry.
Yeah.
That's an unpleasant feeling.
Yeah.
We don't like that.
Yeah.
So we're driven to get rid of that feeling.
Oh, interesting.
It's not necessarily about like, oh, that food is going to taste so good.
It's just, I don't want this feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about getting rid of the negative feeling.
I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah. And he says this is like a fundamental thing that drives us.
Okay.
We feel discomfort. We act to get rid of the discomfort.
So we're all just trying to get to this place of, like,
No discomfort.
Yes, essentially.
Huh. Like our internal thermostat's always trying to hit the perfect temperature.
Exactly. Exactly.
Interesting.
And he says this applies to everything.
Okay.
From basic needs like hunger and thirst to more complex things like love, belonging, even self-actualization.
Okay.
It's all about...
So it goes beyond just the physical.
Yes.
Okay.
It's about understanding those underlying drives.
Right.
But it gets even more interesting because then he talks about conscious desire.
Okay, so if that's just desire, what makes it conscious desire then?
So he says that conscious desires, they're built on those basic desires.
Okay.
But there's this added layer of belief.
Okay. So it's not just, I don't want to be hungry. It's, I believe that eating this cake will stop me being hungry.
Exactly.
Oh.
But, and here's the thing, that belief could be wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We can totally misinterpret what will actually satisfy us.
Right. Tell me about it. Like,
that late night pizza does not actually result in the feeling I am hoping for.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but he doesn't just keep it to these physical needs, right? He expands it out to other things as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So think about like achieving a goal.
Okay.
Like you want to get a promotion at work.
Right.
There's a desire there.
Yeah.
But what's the discomfort you're trying to avoid?
Okay. Yeah. That's
a really good point.
Is it like the feeling of being stuck?
Yeah.
Or the insecurity of your current job?
Yeah, or maybe feeling like other people are kind of...
surpassing you in some way?
Exactly, yeah.
Like, oh, I need to keep up kind of thing.
Yeah, so it was about understanding those deeper motivations.
This is making me really question everything about myself.
Right.
Like, why do I do anything?
That's the beauty of Russell.
This is great.
Right. He forces us to ask these really big questions.
Yeah.
And we're just scratching the surface.
Okay. And this is where things get really interesting for me, right? Because it's not just those big desires like, I want to rule the world, you know?
Right.
He starts to talk about how our past experiences actually shape us in this way.
Yes.
And it's all about these mnemic phenomena.
Yes, and it sounds so much more complicated than it is.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
It is. But all he's really saying is, look, our past experiences don't just disappear.
Right.
They leave these traces in our minds, these little echoes.
Okay.
And those echoes influence how we see the world, how we react to things.
Okay, so it's kind of like when like a song comes on the radio.
Yes.
And suddenly you're back
Exactly.
in that time and place.
Yes, or like a smell.
Yeah, like, oh.
Like fresh cut grass.
Yeah, it takes you right back.
Exactly. You're like, oh, summertime.
Yeah.
Right. Those are those mnemic phenomena, those sensory things that kind of tap into the past.
Okay, so it's like these...
and they color...
like threads almost, right? Like tying the past and the present together.
Yes.
Okay, so how does that then connect back to this whole, like, mind matter thing?
Because that's the heart of it, right?
Yeah.
He's saying that these mnemic phenomena, these echoes, they can't be explained just by what's happening in our brains physically.
So you can't, like, dissect a brain, like, oh, there's the memory.
Exactly. You can't pinpoint the location of nostalgia.
Right, okay. So there's something else.
There's something more there.
Going on there.
Exactly. There's this intangible element of experience.
Yeah.
This subjective quality that goes beyond just the material.
Okay, but then what happens when we start to lose those memories?
That's a good question.
Right. Because they feel so core to who we are.
It is. And you know what? Philosophers have been wrestling with that for centuries.
Right.
But Russell was less interested in the existential side of it.
Okay.
And more in how does it actually work? Like, how are these experiences stored? How are they recalled? How do they shape our view of the world?
So it's not just about those big memories either, right?
No, not at all.
It's those little tiny ones.
It's everything. It's the everyday stuff.
That we don't even really think about.
Exactly. And some of them we might not even consciously remember.
Right, okay.
But they've still left their mark.
Like learning to ride a bike.
Exactly. You might not remember every single wobble.
Yeah.
But your body remembers.
Right. You just do it.
Exactly. That's what he called habit memory.
Okay.
It's the kind of memory that lets us do things automatically.
So it's like our brains are on autopilot.
Exactly. Frees up our conscious mind to focus on other things.
That's really helpful.
Right.
So that's habit memory, and then there's another kind.
There's also what he called knowledge memory.
Okay, what's that?
That's the one we use to consciously recall facts and events.
Okay, so remembering what I had for breakfast this morning, that would be...
knowledge memory.
Knowledge memory, okay.
Whereas knowing how to tie your shoes.
Habit.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
And these two work together.
Okay.
They're like two sides of the same coin.
But how do we know if any of it's even accurate?
Ooh, Good point.
Right. Like, I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, no, it happened this way. And someone's like, that's not how it happened at all.
You're exactly right. And Russell knew this.
Yeah.
He acknowledged that memory is fallible.
It's not perfect.
Not at all. It can be distorted by time, by our own biases.
Right, right.
Even the act of remembering can change the memory itself.
Okay.
It's like trying to put a puzzle back together.
Okay.
You might have most of the pieces,
Yeah.
but some are missing, others are in the wrong place.
You end up with a slightly different picture.
Exactly.
So then how do we make sense of the world if it's all so fluid and subjective?
That's where language comes in.
Okay.
And meaning making.
Right.
We use language to organize our experiences.
Right, to try to put it into words.
Exactly, to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And to share those understandings with each other.
So for like creating these narratives.
Exactly. We're all authors of our own life stories.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
Right. Piecing together those memory fragments.
But if the memories are flawed and the language is all like subjective.
It raises the question.
Yeah, does objective truth even exist then?
And that is a question that Russell grappled with.
Yeah.
Throughout his work.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. And it's one we're going to delve into even deeper in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Because his exploration of mind, it doesn't stop there.
Of course not.
We've got to talk about truth, falsehood, knowledge itself.
All right, let's do it. All right. So we've gone through consciousness. We've talked about memory. We've even gotten into how our desires actually work. Now, I feel like we're ready to tackle the really big questions here.
The big philosophical mountains.
Exactly. Truth, falsehood, like what does it even mean to know something? I'm ready.
Well, get ready, because Russell, he doesn't shy away from these.
Okay.
But he does ground them in a way that I think is really helpful.
Yeah.
So for him, it all starts with this relationship between what we believe and what's actually true in the world.
Okay.
If those two things line up, you've got yourself a true belief.
Makes sense.
But if they don't, well, then you're in the realm of falsehood.
Which, let's be honest, feels like a very easy place to get stuck these days. I mean, we're just bombarded with information from all sides.
Oh, absolutely. And everyone's saying their version is the truth.
Exactly. So how do we even begin to, like, cut through that noise?
Well, this is something Russell was very aware of, right?
Yeah.
He knew our perceptions can be flawed, our memories are fuzzy, even the language we use can trip us up.
Yeah, it's a minefield out there.
It really is. It's like trying to put together a puzzle, but some of the pieces are from a completely different box.
Right. So how do we even begin to navigate that? Like, it feels like you could question everything endlessly.
You could. And this is where I think Russell gets really practical.
Okay.
He says, look, we can't just sit back and passively absorb whatever's thrown at us.
Okay.
We have to be active. We have to be critical thinkers.
So question everything.
In a way, yes. Test those beliefs. Be open to new information, even if it means changing your mind about something.
It's like that idea of strong opinions, loosely held, right?
Exactly. You can have convictions, but hold on to them with an open hand.
Okay, I like that. But even then, how do you know what information to trust in the first place?
Right. And remember, Russell's living in a time of immense change, too.
That's true, yeah.
Think about it. World War I had just ended. Science is advancing like crazy. There are all these competing ideologies. He understood how powerful and dangerous false beliefs could be.
So, in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control, what does he offer as, like, an antidote to that?
He keeps coming back to these core values of critical thinking, education, open dialogue. But then he adds this other layer. He says we also need to be sensitive and appropriate in our responses.
Those sound like surprisingly nuanced words for a philosopher wrestling with these big ideas.
Right, but they're crucial. When he says sensitive, he means being able to pick up on those subtle differences, to really discern between things.
Okay, so like a chef who can taste a dish and just know what's in it?
Exactly. That's sensitivity. And then appropriateness builds on that. It's about taking that information and responding in a way that actually serves your goals.
So the chef doesn't just taste the food, they use that knowledge to make it even better.
There you go. It's about applying what you know.
Yeah.
Having all the right information is useless if you don't know what to do with it.
It's like having all the parts to a car but not knowing how to actually, like, build the car.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But where does falsehood fit into all of this then?
For Russell, it's really straightforward. Falsehood is simply the absence of truth. It's a belief that doesn't line up with reality. And he knew how easily it could spread, especially when it was tied to things like bias or fear.
Which brings us right back to those mnemic phenomena we were talking about, right? The way we remember things, the stories we tell ourselves, those can all be shaped by our biases, which makes us more likely to believe things that aren't even true.
Exactly. If we're constantly exposed to certain ideas, even if they're false, they can take root.
Like subconscious programming almost.
In a way, yes. It's why it's so important to actively seek out different perspectives, to challenge our own assumptions.
To be our own fact checkers, basically.
Exactly. Always be asking, where did this information come from? Is it reliable? What other perspectives am I missing?
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into Russell's analysis of mind, what are the big takeaways you hope people walk away with?
I think the biggest one is this. Russell wants us to approach the mind not as this mysterious black box, but as something we can understand. Through careful observation, through critical thinking, through really looking inward.
And not being afraid to question what we find there.
Exactly. He reminds us that real knowledge isn't just about memorizing facts. It's about using those facts to navigate the world, to make decisions, and to always be open to learning more.
To always keep searching for those answers. Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive. It's been quite a journey. And until next time, keep exploring.